ワンピースは実在する。
俺はモンキー・ディ・ルフィ。お前らを超えて海賊王になる男だ。
人の夢は終わらねえ。
Welcome
to Nerdville.
We'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
Hey everyone, I'm Fanfi.
and I'm Turtles.
Yeah, so it's been a while, everyone. We had a lot of stuff to do, projects to prepare and stuff for the channel. But we're back at it again with another discussion from chapter 1103 to 104, because we didn't have time to cover that at the time. But now we do, and we're going to do both chapters at once. So let's get started.
I mean, let's start with like how in 1103, one of the things we did, like we had talked when we read the chapters, was we weren't too sure why Bonnie changed her mind about, like, you know, trying to kill Vegapunk, and the start of the chapter really just tells you why. She saw the memories and she understands why now, which is a very touching moment.
Yeah, I mean, we had assumed, right? But it wasn't, you know, confirmed that that was the case. He was still pretty upset at Vegapunk right before seeing the memories, right, as well. So yeah, and I mean, we get, you know, the real conclusion of the backstory, right, tying the backstory back into, you know, what Bonnie saw. And I mean, it ties back into the story. Finally, we're back, you know, we're done with the backstory. It was a great backstory, but I think that's the you know, the big feeling we get out of this, out of seeing, you know, Bonnie and Vegapunk in the present day, is that, yeah, we're back, right? Back to the present.
For sure. Also, it's like the interesting part, I think the main part in that chapter is Saturn really gives us a better idea of what went on, like what they try to do with Bonnie, like the fact that her fruit is like, that was an experiment where they were just trying to figure out if babies could basically, in a way, eat devil fruits before they could actually eat. Like, that's what he says. And that I'm not too sure because of the translation, like if it's like he did an experiment on Ginny afterwards, or if it was the experiment that led to her getting the sapphire scale. I mean, what are your thoughts actually on that?
Yeah, that was like, for me, there's two possibilities, because when I read that, I was like, I mean, I think the first time I read it with the bad translation, it sounded, I don't remember having that issue, but rereading it now for the discussion, right, like, it does feel like there is two possibilities, right, like that the sapphire scales and the devil fruit experiment were one of the same, right, like, Saturn experimented on Ginny in her womb, right, to basically see if the injection was made in her womb, to see if, you know, Bonnie could develop powers as an experiment. Yeah, and obviously the sapphire scales for this option are like a side effect of that. But then again, it seems like it's two different things. Like Saturn is saying specifically here, an infant who, I don't remember exactly what the phrase is. It says an infant who can't eat solid foods or something like that, right? So it seems like it's implying that the infant is born, right? Yeah, it's two options, right? Like, or it's two different experiments. One that they did on Ginny, to just an experiment that we don't really know what the, you know, what the real experiment was for, but the side effects, unfortunately, were the sapphire scales that, you know, transmitted itself to Bonnie. And then they did the experiment on Bonnie with the devil fruits, because she's like a disposable baby. Like, why not, you know, experiment on her? Or the, like we said, the experiments are, you know, one and the same.
Another part I think is that's underrated in that chapter is like one line where he says that she was the wife of the eighth wife of a fellow that was a celestial dragon, just informing us that she, like, it wasn't even a high-ranking celestial dragon that took her. It was just a guy that just, you know, wanted her as his wife. And I wonder at that point if it was just fate for her to become like a subject for Saturn's experiments, or if he actually knew who she was and did it on purpose to hurt Kuma. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I remember when we read that chapter, my initial thoughts, because with the bad translation, right, were that the lines, I don't remember what it said, but it said eighth wife of a you know, celestial dragon or something. And the 8 wives, I was curious if it had something to do with like the 800 years, right? One wife every 100 years or something. But the fact that they say, yeah, that it's a fellow, it's a random, you know, member of the Celestial Dragons, or else he would, you know, specify, right? He'd be like, it wouldn't be just a fellow, right? And yeah, maybe Saturn knew, right, that Bonnie, that Ginny, and Kuma were close, because like we saw it many times in the chapter before that Saturn, sorry, is like, he has a grudge against Kuma for what he, you know, did during the God Valley incident. So he might have been keeping tabs, but it's hard to see. I wouldn't see really how Saturn would keep tabs. Do you have any ideas?
I don't know, but if he didn't keep tabs, like, what a twist of fate that it just worked out that way for him perfectly.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's like a spy in the Revolutionary Army. That's possible. Because the revolutionaries did know that Ginny was in love with, you know, Kuma. They kept saying it over and over.
That is true.
I mean, we did kind of forget something. It's the, like, it's again, you know, a nod to Luffy's gears when Ginny shouts out, "Give me a Nika-ish future." Well, this time it's not gear 3rd, it's gear 4th, where she has the, like, kind of wind up, right? With the fist entering the elbow, or, well, sorry, not the elbow, right? The forearm, right? Like, it's entering slowly, and there's that, like, yeah, it looks a lot like Gear 4. So there's even more, you know, winks to that, and I just found it, you know, interesting. And with obviously Saturn's reaction to it, right? Like Nika and him, I think later on saying that, you know, or maybe that's in the next chapter, right? But saying that, you know, Nika, that she hasn't made the link between Nika and Luffy's white form, right? Which we had said before, that in any case she wouldn't have made the connection because she hasn't seen Luffy's white form.
I mean, her fruit is interesting now because it's not exactly how it was described to us, right? It's more like it has more base in imagination than like relative to age. It's like, it's kind of just like she pictures like a future and then manifests it. Like,
yeah, and what's interesting, I think, as well, is that we were like, you know, in the chapter where she punched the lights out of Alpha, we were saying, you know, oh, well, it's super impressive, right? Like, it's more impressive than what Luffy did, you know, in a sense. But this kind of puts things back into perspective, where you're like, well, in any case, I mean, the fruit is more powerful when you're a kid, because when you're a kid, it's that moment where you have the most imagination, right? Where you're the most curious. So it would make sense that fruit would work with, you know, a child.
Exactly. Which is probably why they wanted to put that fruit in an infant, to see also what would happen.
Maybe, yeah, because he did say it was useless, right? So if it's useless for an adult who, you know, is cynical and has a deeper understanding of the world through, like, science and stuff, right? But a child, you know, open-minded and everything, yeah, that could have been the experiment in the end. What else do we have in this chapter?
I mean, how it ends, right? With just Kuma coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, of course.
I did not see Kuma coming to save the day. Like, I just did not anticipate it. When I saw that he was showing up, I was like, oh, this is incredible. Because we thought he was just, you know, stuck in Marie-Joie, right? And we had no clue what he was really trying to do. Yeah,
I mean, there were, you know, with the backstory, you could, you know, assume that that Jay Garcia, that he was going to come and stop Jay Garcia, right? He was like his main antagonist. So, but with, you know, how things were put, you know, with him, you know, us not being sure how Kuma is reacting right now, if it's on instinct, if he's like following orders in a weird way, like we didn't really know what he was doing. So yeah, that kind of made things, you know, more complicated to know if Kuma was going to be arriving here or not, right? I think it's interesting also how he's gonna save Bonnie like Ace saved Luffy, right? Like getting, you know, impaled through the stomach, back to the his back is to the attacker, protecting his daughter, like, you know, Ace protected Luffy. It's pretty
I mean, that's
pretty sweet.
That's like the way a hero dies, right? Saving another person, jump.
Yeah.
You know? put your body in the way.
Yeah, I mean, on top of it, he's not dead, and as we know in the next chapter, right? For those of you who've read it, like he is like not dead, but is dead in a weird way. So
he should be dead, basically.
Should be dead. Yeah, it's an interesting chapter for sure. And I mean, the biggest question, like I think that a lot of people had when they read this chapter, because it's been a few weeks now that it's been out, is you know, who gave Luffy the food, right?
That is true. Like, who gave Luffy the food? I'm gonna bet.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna bet it might be Kizaru, honestly. Just
yeah,
you know, he seems like
it's a lot of people were saying that. I saw a couple of videos where on the thumbnail it was like Kizaru gave Luffy the food or something like that. And yeah, like it kind of makes sense, right?
I mean, he doesn't seem very convinced that everybody should die.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he has a hesitating moment where he's thinking about Bonnie and Sentomaru, so I think that's more the leading thing that makes people think that, anyways. And what makes me believe it more is the fact that all of the other candidates are kind of incapacitated, right? Like Zoro's fighting Lucci. I don't know where Robin is, but any of the Straw Hats, if they had given Luffy food, would have entered the fray, would have tried to help Bonnie, you know what I mean? So it can't be any of the Straw Hats. It can't be any of the Vegapunks, because, I mean, they would have, you know, also, you know, helped out, right? And try to save Bonnie or something. Unless maybe it's one of the Vegapunks that we thought were dead, like maybe Shaka is somehow still alive and crawled his way to this battlefield and saw that Luffy needed food. And there's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts, right? But like, I think the other big contender, if it's not Kizaru, is, you know, the person who Turtles and I believe will definitely make it to Laugh Tale, and I think that a lot of other people believe that too. And the person who always gives Luffy food when he's in need, being Caribou. Like,
oh, that's true. I didn't even think about that.
Like,
oh,
I mean,
oh, you're right.
It's Caribou, right? Like, that's his job. That's his straw hat job.
You know what? I'm not doing Kizaru anymore. I'm definitely Caribou. It has to be.
Well, I mean, from what we see later on, in the next chapter, right? Like, it feels like it's kind of putting Kizaru as the person who didn't do it, because, you know, we'll talk about it later. But Caribou could be another option, right? It's still possible that Kizaru did it, right? But I think Caribou is the only plausible other option, apart from, you know, the Shaka thing I mentioned earlier, right? If one of them survives and, you know, is unable to battle, right, but can, you know, provide support with, you know, food, meat for Luffy. And I think, like, the last thing I would say, it kind of leads into the next chapter, right, where we see that, you know, Kuma has Haki on his hand, you know, and for me, like, Haki, right, is linked to willpower, right? If you've completely removed someone's will, then for me, they can't use Haki, right? Or they're using it maybe on muscle memory or something like that, right? Like, maybe that's the best way to put it. But if you're literally putting your will into your fist and you can't, you know, don't have any will, then it shouldn't work, right? But I mean, here it shows that, you know, Kuma still has will, and we had talked about that, right, in the previous discussions and in our other reviews, where Kuma definitely still had an instance of will in him, even during, like, it was one of our answers to why maybe, you know, Kuma protected the Sunny, right? That he still had some will within him, even if we know that's not true, right? We know that now, you know, Kuma still does have an instance of will, and maybe it's because of what, you know, Vegapunk, yeah, reveals in the next chapter, right?
I mean, this whole Kuma situation is uncharted territory, basically, for everybody that's trying to understand what's going on, right?
Yeah.
So, and we know that in One Piece, will is a big thing too. It's a major driver, a major driving force for everything. So,
yeah, theme as well, like inherited will and all that, right? Like,
sure.
Luffy inheriting Rogers, Ace inheriting Whitebeards, Blackbeard's inheriting Teaches, like.
Well, you mean Blackbeard inheriting Roxas, right?
Yeah, Blackbeard inheriting Rocks, yeah.
Yeah, he inherited his own will. Good job.
But yeah, that, I mean, kind of brings us to our, you know, the question that we will have in the thumbnail, right? Which is, how strong is Kuma? Like, because from what we see, right, like I said, if Haki is linked to will and he literally has no will left, then what we're seeing is just ridiculous, uncharted territory, as you said, right? Like,
it's crazy levels of power at that point.
and it's not only, I mean, the fact that he can use Haki while having no will, but it's the damage he's doing to Garcia is crazy.
I mean, that punch, oof, chills. Chills. It's one of those, Kobe punches, Luffy punching, like whomever he's fought. Like it's that kind of,
And it's not in, as they say, right, the Marines, it's not even the scale of the punch, which is, the biggest thing. It's that, it's a slave punching, one of the like overseers, right? I think that's what it was written, of the world government. So that's another crazy part to it as well. It's like complete, retribution for everything that Saturn has done to him.
It was a long time coming. You could feel that punch was a long time coming for sure.
and I think that we had seen, instances of how strong Kuma actually was, right? Like in his backstory when he's like a 1v, 1000ing like entire armies and like soloing an island, a kingdom, right? Like on his own. Just like he's been impressive like throughout his whole backstory, and he's also just been very impressive here, right? Like, and he's not even technically alive, as we figure out later on in the chapter, right? So that's the even more impressive part of it, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, he's insane.
And I mean that brings us to Vegapunk being at a loss for words, right? He doesn't understand how this is happening, how it's possible. It's he's completely blindsided, like, and I actually really like that. I like that, sometimes, even the smartest person on the planet, decade above anyone else, just can't make sense of the situation because it has nothing to do with science. It has to do with, emotion and feeling, right?
It comes back to I think some people would even say it's like the soul, like it's something that's just inside you, and there's nothing you can do to take it away unless you're not there anymore.
Yeah, they should have checked if Kuma lost 21 grams before he died.
I mean, they thought he blew up.
No.
And that was a really cool moment to see that. Even though Vegapunk, during the story, even the backstory, they show you that he does compromise his morals to, get access, be able to do a bunch of different experiments and all that kind of stuff. He still couldn't, bring himself to do this to Kuma. And he said it too, that he knew that they were going to use him in a devious way as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, use the explosion, like might as well use it, while he takes, while taking out a city, right, or something like that. That's totally something the Celestial Dragons would do. Well,
or the revolutionaries. They knew that the revolutionaries would come back for him, and then you can just blow them up.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Which explains what they were talking about.
I think Saturn said something like that in the previous chapter in 1103. He said, like, to Bonnie, he said, "Your father is dead." Like, he didn't say he's gone, he's not himself, and whatever. He said he's dead, and it wasn't like metaphorical, like he's not a human anymore, right? He's a machine, or he said he's dead, and that's because he thought he had, detonated him, right? Mm-hmm. So getting that confirmation as well is interesting.
And that explains what happened at the revolutionaries too, because we saw a scene where they don't understand why suddenly he just kind of just ups and leaves. And now we know why. Because the sequence was activated.
Yeah, definitely. How about, Saturn's devil fruit or whatever it is? Like, there's still a possibility for me that it's not a devil fruit and he's just a straight up demon, right? Like, it seems like he is like haphazardly letting people attack him. The explanation to that is there in two parts, right? One, he doesn't feel pain. For me, because or else why would you let these like insects, right, damage you? And two, the regeneration of this fruit is infinite in my mind, because like, again, why would you let this happen? Like, he's a super strong guy with Conqueror's Haki, lightning and stuff emanating from him. At that point, why would you let yourself get hit by the, and it feels like he is, right? He's like, oops, you know, like, oh no, and then he just regenerates completely and seemingly with no limit. Like, it's pretty crazy.
I mean, it's possible that that's the case. Maybe he hasn't tested the limit enough. Also, what I would say is, like, it looks like there's a possibility, we're not sure yet, that if you hit him hard enough, that you will be able to, you know, at least, you know, knock him out, because Kuma's punch clearly shows you can do some major damage there.
Yeah, but I mean, then he just regenerated everything.
It's just, you just have to go full Luffy on them, you know. Don't stop the assault until nothing is left.
Island-sized punch, right? Like,
Exactly.
oh, you gotta one-shot him, I think. That's the only way.
In a way.
That's what I think from what I see. Like, you gotta one-shot him, or else maybe secret. Like, the thing is, like, hockey is supposed to, like, you know, impede people from being able to use their powers, right? But as I said, if this isn't a power and they're actually demons, right, like, that could be, you know, problematic.
I mean, it would just make it would make it more complicated, because on top of it, they're not weak to the sea either. So it's not like you can use that to your advantage. They would just be incredibly powerful on their own.
No, definitely. What did you think about Kizaru in this chapter?
We knew he was going to get back up, so I wasn't surprised about that. I mean, it looks like he's maybe a little bit ahead of Luffy, but he's just impressive. But I always thought Kizaru was impressive in his own right. His fruit is incredible. This whole arc, he's proven that he's just really tough opponent, and that, you know, why he's an admiral in the Navy. Like, there's no doubt left about that.
Yeah, and why he's, like, you know, government's #1 assassin, right? Like, I mean, like, once he took that punch from Luffy, I remember seeing a lot of, you know, stuff saying, oh, you know, Luffy destroys Kizaru, right? Like, and here, like, he doesn't need to eat meat and regenerate or whatever to get back up. He just needed a bit of time. And, you know, he's back in the fight, right? Like, for me, at this point anyways, from what we've seen, Kizaru is a bit more impressive than Luffy for now, right? Like, until Luffy completely, you know, masters Gear 5, which he hasn't.
He's more polished for sure.
He's definitely more polished, yeah. Right, that's a good way to put it. And I mean, it's back to what we were saying before, right? For the previous chapter, that you know, Kizaru might be the person who gave Luffy food. Yes, I still think it's a possibility, and that maybe he just wanted to, you know, help Bonnie and Sentomaru, as he said, give them a chance to escape, perhaps, and then get, you know, back into action, you know, following his orders. But, you know, with how they put Kizaru on opposite sides to the Straw Hats this chapter, and, you know, teasing them and taunting them, it might be that, you know, he isn't that person that gave Luffy food.
Or maybe it's just a show, so they never suspect him that he's the one that gave food to Luffy.
Definitely possible. He's fast enough to do it without anyone noticing.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I think the end of the chapter is kind of predictable. Like, once they realize that it's just going to be a hard fight, that Buster call, I mean, I wasn't surprised by it. I don't think you were either. It's just, they have to.
They're studying the Void Center, or they studied at one point on Egghead the Void Century. So once you do that, you're gonna get Buster called. Like,
it's kind of the standard.
At one point,
it's kind of the standard.
Like, they definitely needed to make sure that, you know, Vegapunk was dead, or in a situation where they can just guarantee he's gonna die before they can Buster call, right? Because they don't want the chaos. But yeah, the Buster call was definitely just, you know, inevitable. And, you know, it just makes sense. Again, with everything we've seen, they couldn't save it at this point. Too much has happened. There's too many strong people, I think, at this point, especially like but it just reinforces the fact that Kuma is that powerful, because even him as a shell of himself, that's the factor that makes them, you know, say, okay, now we need to do a Buster call. Before that, they were like, we can still handle the situation. Once Kuma shows up, it's like, no, this is not possible anymore. And that just props to, like, how, like, yeah, but it's adding on top, right? Like, because like he says at the end of the chapter, Garcia, right? He's like a traitor who studied the secrets of the world, a survivor of, you know, the despised bloodline and a pirate with the powers of the ancient god, right? So like it's just one thing after another. So at this point, yeah, just Buster call the shit out of them. Like,
I mean, you kind of have to. I'm just
like you said, like
I'm just a big fan of Kuma now. I think before Kuma was important, but I never, you never felt really connected to him in any way, and
I felt sorry for him.
Well, you just didn't know much about him until really the backstory hit, if you think about it.
Well, we knew that he had trained Sabo and that he was, we assumed that he was forced into becoming, a government dog, as they say, right? So, yes, I agreed there wasn't enough, details to make him, us feel the way we do now about him, right? That's definitely true.
No, but it also explains a lot of his behavior towards the Straw Hats too. Stuff we speculated upon, but were just, confirmed at the end of this. And I can't wait to see how they're gonna escape this. My bet is that giant robots of dreams that we've talked about in the past. That's the
we called it ages ago. Yeah,
I think that's the missing piece, because I just don't see how they get out of this, like with a Buster call.
Because they destroyed the Vega Force 1, right? So like, what's the other big robot that could technically do exactly the same plan that they have without changing their plans? Well, it's the giant robot of dreams, right?
and on top of it, Luffy's coming back. And that means the Drums of Liberation is going to come back. So that power,
we had
getting
thought
powered by that.
Yeah, that's what we thought. Powered the giant. And again, it's called the giant robot of dreams, and they emphasized it on it, right? Like Kizaru said it. We don't know why it's called that. We have our speculations, but we don't know why yet. So we could get maybe a very small backstory on that, after it wakes up. I would like, if it's relevant to the story, like an important piece of information, like I wouldn't mind that, a very short backstory, like one chapter.
Well, I think first it needs to save them, then maybe we'll have a history lesson on it.
Because generally I think there's 2 backstories per big arc, right? Like on Wano there was Oden and
Kaido?
Oden and Kaido. On Dressrosa there was Law and Doffy, even though they were kind of linked. So was Oden and Kaido as well. But
we did get Vegapunk in a way, so we already got Vegapunk and Kuma.
We didn't get a lot of Vegapunk. We didn't get we got some snippets where we saw him with Dragon and stuff, but we didn't get
well, we didn't get his childhood.
I don't need a big
we didn't get his childhood, but we got the highlights of his career and life.
Yeah, that through Kuma's backstory, we got a bit of highlights. But yeah, generally, again, like even in Whole Cake, it was Sanji and Big Mom, right? There's generally 2 backstories per arc. Maybe he's gonna slow down the pace, right? Because he wants to get the story done. But I could see a short backstory on Vegapunk, as short as we got on Kaido.
We did get Bonnie as Bonnie as a bonus as well to Kuma's backstory.
We did get Bonnie as a bonus. That's true.
Because now that we know she's 10, we got her entire backstory. Like, there's nothing else to add to it. Like, he gave us all the information.
She's 14.
Well, she's 14. So we don't know what happened. 12. She's 12. Or 13.
12, yeah.
12 or 13.
Yeah. 12, no, she's 12 because it was 14 years ago when Ginny got captured and 2 years after when she escaped, I think. Pretty sure.
And she was 9.5 when she went on the seas, too. She wasn't 10.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, after 3 years, yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, except for what happened during the 2 year span, like the 2 years, we know everything that's happened to Bonnie from like her birth to now.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, she kind of said what she was doing. Like, she was searching for Nika and searching for her dad, right? Like, that's what she was doing, I guess. But I mean, we could get another, extension on Bonnie or, Vegapunk, which could be interesting. If it, like, for me, if it has to do something with the giant robot of dreams, as we speculated in one of our reviews. Don't remember which one, but you get it.
But I know that.
Yeah, like that could be interesting.
So this was our discussion on chapter 1103 and 1104. And if you could tell us what you think is gonna happen next, and also how Kuma, like, where would you rank Kuma in like the all-time strongest characters in One Piece?
We're also working on a few other things, such as a full backstory for Kuma and a new video on Pokemon. So stay tuned for that.
See you next time.
Peace out.